Hello everybody, this is Kim Kerschel from the Quiltery giving you a tutorial, teaching a tutorial on the needle book, hand needle organizer that we did during the retreat. I have a few examples here that I wanted to show that will be what we're going to be making. This is the needle book here that we're going to make in this class. Okay, this one uses strips as the outer cover, a focal fabric, and then some strips. Whereas I did make another one because I wanted to try another way. This one uses an outer cover that is all one fabric. And this allowed me to, I know you can't see it because of the fabric is, the 30s fabric is kind of busy, but I free motion quilted on this one. And then I embellished. I love wool work and beads, so I played with that a little bit. But for the sake of time for our retreat, I taught and will teach you all this one, which has an outer cover that is strips. The reason why is it's a quilt as you go method, and you would be able to finish it at the end of our 2-hour class. So anyway, that being said, next I'm going to go over the parts and pieces for this project, and I did give you the cutting instructions, so you've already cut it, or you're going to cut it after you've watched this. But we're just going to go through everything, and I'll show you how I organize myself. So, and at this point also, please, you should have downloaded our pattern, which was emailed, I believe, and I know it's on our Facebook group, Needlebook Hand Needle Organizer class. All right, so here we go. Here is fabric A that I have you cut. There's a focal fabric and then 10 strips. You could also do a focal fabric and 4 strips. The pattern called for 10, so that's what I will teach. That is going to be paired with a piece of Pellon Fusible 987, 6.5 by 21.5 inch piece, okay? Lay those things together. Lay your A fabrics with the fusible fleece, because those fabrics are going to go on that, so you'll be ready. Your inner cover of your needle book is fabric B. And here I picked this really pretty batik. And just to show you where that is, that's this fabric. It actually is a supporting character underneath this piece, which is called the needle packet compartment. And these 3 pieces are done separately, okay? So we're going to have our outer cover. This is our lining. And then I'm going to get to it in a second here. We will have our needle packet pockets, all right? So here's B is our liner, inner cover. That is going to get paired with a piece of decor bond that these were pre-cut and put in your bags, so hopefully that's in there. If not, you can, or if you want to make another one, you'll see the dimensions. This is decor bond. It's a little stiffer. It's also a Pellon product, but it's a little stiffer than your fusible fleece. Is very light, and it's soft and fleecy. It is fusible on one side. You'll see one side is real smooth and the other side is bumpily. The bumpily side is your fusible. The decor bond has a kind of a rougher woven side, and then a shiny, you can almost see it here, shiny side, which is the fusible. All right, that's what is going to stick to the fabric. So pair the 5.5 inch piece by 20 inch piece up with your fabric B. Okay, like that. And then our third piece is the needle packet compartment, which is this piece here. Okay, and that I have labeled. And there are 3 fabrics in that group. There's fabric C, which is the band at the top of your needle packet compartment, where I also stick my needle that I'm working with that belongs to that compartment. Then we have fabric D, which is this focal piece in the middle. That's the D. Then we have fabric E, which is a little piece peeking out here, but actually is a supporting character again because it ends up being folded underneath, and it's the back inside, even though you don't see it, of the needle packet compartment. All right. And with these 3 fabrics, there's one more piece of Decor Bond, which is 4.5 by 21.5. All right. So pair this up with fabric C, D, and E. All right. Now we are going to move ahead. Actually, I'm going to stop for 1 minute because I wanted to share something. I had alluded to when I first began that this needle book, this one, I did differently. I used one piece of outer fabric. Now, if you haven't cut your fabric, or if you want to make another book, here's an option for you where you use one piece of fabric versus strips and quilt as you go. This fabric was done the same way as this will be prepared, but it was in one piece. Then I took it and I free motion quilted this fabric, which was on my fusible fleece, and I also embellished it. I kind of guessed and said, well, I know my needle book, this piece is probably going to be 5.5. Yes, it would be 5.5. I'm going to embellish something right here. So I did that before I did the rest of the book. Like I said, for class, we're going to do the method here where it's a quilt as you go so that you can get it done. But this is an option. If you decide to do this, it's written in the pattern as an option. After you were to do this front piece this way, you can jump right back in at the inner cover, okay? All right, let's put some of these fabrics aside. And we are going to start by laying your fusible web, fusible side up, all right? And again, you'll feel a rough, bumpily side. That's the fusible. And if you haven't used it before, maybe you have and you know. Otherwise, the one side, it's very soft. And this side, my hands catch on it more. We are going to take your fabrics labeled A, which is your focal fabric, and then your pieces. We are going to start by laying this fabric A left justified, left side and bottom left justified here on your fusible fleece. We are then going to do what I call, or I believe it is called, the stitch and flip method, where you, whatever strip you want, you line up your strips that you want on here. You pick your first strip. Now, the other thing is, I should mention, I'm using batiks, and batiks really don't have a right and a wrong side, really. But you want to put, if you're using regular fabric, you want the wrong side down against this against this fleece to begin with. So this is the right side pointing up, okay? The other thing is, be careful if you're using a fabric that's directional, because this book, this is going to become, it's going to end up being turned this way in this book, you see, and it's going to be up this way. So if you have a fabric that's running horses or something, or somebody had dancing cats, and we didn't really think about it until the end, and the cats were dancing upside down, which was cute, but I know she didn't want that. Plan ahead, okay? So this is the way your book is going to be when you're done. So just realize you can flip it around, okay? Or I guess actually you could start, if you have a fabric that's directional, you could actually start from the right hand side. That's really what you would do. You would right justify your fabric if it was directional, and then continue this way with your stitch and flip. I'm going to teach this way for today. All right, so on our table, lay your fusible down, bumpy side, fusible side up. Focal fabric, big fabric A lined up left side with the bottom. And we're going to, right side up, we're going to take one of our strips, right side to right side, okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 1/4 inch here. And then we are going to flip this over, finger press, Then we're going to take our next strip, right sides together, 1/4 of an inch, flip it over, finger press, and so on until we get to the end there. Okay? You may find that you have a little less fusible fleece than fabric on your last strip. Don't worry about it because this is going to be trimmed down at the end so that everything, when we layer it, will match. All right? So at this point, you have you've sewn this and all your strips down. The next thing we need to do is actually fuse these fabrics to this fusible. Now, I'll give you a brief tutorial on Pellon fusible, whether it's fleece or Decor Bond, it's the same process. Heat your iron to wool. And I know everybody's wool maybe is a little different, but you want a pretty hot iron, so you want wool. And then we're going to have a spray. You want to have a spray bottle, squirt bottle with water. And I also use a cloth pressing sheet that I have run under water and really kind of wrung out to get the excess water out. And not everybody finds they need to use the damp pressing cloth. Sometimes the water suffices. I have to use both because of the temperature of my iron. We're going to create steam basically, and that steam is what's going to make the fusible adhere to your fabric. So the other thing is you want to protect your ironing board because inevitably fusible can go other places. So I put a Teflon pressing sheet down first. Okay. Then you are going to place your outer cover that you just sewed all your strips on face side down, okay, so that the soft fusible part is up. You're going to want to spray your fusible here, not soaking, but just mist it pretty well. And this is where I then lay my pressing sheet over this. My iron is good and hot. Starting here on the left, I put my iron down anywhere from 5 to 15 seconds. About 10 is usually the average. Then I move it to the next spot, overlapping a bit. And you should hear the water or your pressing cloth sizzling a bit. That's a good thing. And continue all the way down till you get to your end. Several students in the class did mention that based on whatever iron temperature they had, the pressing cloth didn't work for them. They needed to just mist their fusible fleece and then it adhered. So like I say, you may be able to do just the spray and then doing your pressing rather, or you may need to use both. All right. So when you've got that very well fused, it would look like, well, it's going to look like this, okay? Here it is. It's all fused. And you might wonder why we're going to trim it, but it's because even when we try, the strips scoot just a little bit on the fusible. I guess if you used your walking foot, they wouldn't, but I didn't stop to switch back and forth. I just used my regular sewing foot. All right, so this is our outer cover. Now we are going to trim our outer cover to 5.5 by 20. All right, take this to your cutting board, 5.5 by 20. And you don't necessarily have to start here and do 20 out to here. You might like maybe a little bit less of this on the front, maybe this showing a little bit. Basically, wherever you want, this length has to be 20. Whether you start here and you get 20, or you start there and get 20, or you start at the beginning and cut off here. You have to have 20 long. 5.5 inches wide. So this width has to go to 5.5. All right. Trim that right up so you have a very nice piece that measures 5.5 by 20. Right. And once you've done that, I'm going to put all my samples away here. You're going to take that cover and we're just going to put it aside. This is our outer cover. I'm going to put it aside for now. All right. We'll get back to it in a little bit. Next thing we're going to work on is we are actually going to work on our inner cover. This is a very easy one. Here's our inner cover, right? We are going to pull out fabric B and the matching fusible that goes with it, 5.5 by 20. This is our decor bond. This is a stabilizer, but more of a stiffer stabilizer. So we are going to figure out which side is the shinier side. You can see it, and that's the fusible. That's going to be what sticks. This other side is just woven. You're going to put your fusible side up here, okay? And your wrong side of your fabric is going to go on the sticky part. That should make sense. So we're basically going to fuse so that we have the right side up on the fusible. All right. Go to the ironing board, and you've got your pressing cloth down. Again, the wool setting. We are going to fuse this down like we fused all the fabrics on the front cover. Same thing. This sometimes, I will tell you, is a little booger to get to stick. So missed it. Try the damp pressing cloth again, starting here, anywhere between 5 to 15 seconds before you move it to the next spot, and so on all the way across. Like I said, this is where some of the students had trouble with the pressing cloth. They had to just miss this pretty well. It'll come out. Have faith. Between one of those two methods or both, it will adhere. And this should measure 5.5 by 20, which is your fabric and your interfacing should be the same. All right. So that is our inner cover. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to come to the needle packet compartment, which is this piece right here. So it's C, D, and E. C, D, and E. And its corresponding fusible decor bond, which is 4.5 by 21.5. This is a little longer. We're going to trim it. So, first thing we're going to do is we are going to lay our fabric E down. Pretend this isn't sewn yet. I'm going to lay my fabric E down face side up. I'm going to lay fabric D across the top of it, right sides together. And then I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way down that side. Press it towards the dark side and you will see, yes, press it towards the dark side. And then what we're going to do is we are going to turn this over so that our wrong sides are facing us. Take your hands, the top of D. We are going to scoot it and roll it down. So, oh, look at that. A portion of fabric E, the right side of E, comes around. And I would measure 3/4 of an inch. Have this be 3/4 of an inch all the way down. So then I would like you to go to the iron and press a nice crease there. All right. Now we're going to build our compartment. We are going to take this piece of fusible decor bond, the 4.5 by 21.5. We are going to just lift up this piece that we have just made the crease in. And we're going to take this decor bond, fusible side down on the back side of fabric D, okay? Because we want this to stick to D because it's going to be the inside lining that gives the needle packet compartment its body. Going to scoot that right in there up to the crease. Fold this down. Be sure that's all up in there. We're going to take this to the ironing board and we're going to fuse this down, okay? And what's going to fuse here is going to be the fusible to the inside here. This is going to be loose, but it needs to be in this position, all right? So you've done, now at this point, let's pretend we have done that. We've fused this down and this is really fused on here. You turn this over here, you will see you may have a little bit of fusible sticking out here. you need to trim that flush with the edge of this piece of fabric, all right, so that they're both the same. Once you've done that, we're going to flip it over. Now the fabric C comes in. Here's my fabric C. I used a wool felt. Now, we're going to pretend that my top is level, okay, with fabric E. We're going to lay fabric C on top of the top side of D and line it up with the top edge of fabric E from the back. All right, now you see how we've covered that over? We are now going to take this to the sewing machine. You might want to put a couple pins in there, and we're going to top stitch. You see here how I top stitched? We're going to top stitch right all the way down there. Okay. And once you've done that, what I do is I kind of look at it and say, okay, well, I need to have 20 inches here. That needs to be the same length as my front cover, my outer cover, and my inner lining. They're 5.5 by 20. So we're not gonna worry about the width of this. We're gonna worry about the length. We want to cut this at 20 so that it'll match our other pieces. All right. So we have done that. Now, this is something I just wanted to bring up because I learned this later after I did this book. I chose, actually, you can do a button closure when we get to the end here. You can do a button closure, that's fine. You see there? Or some people use a ponytail holder that has elastic. You could do that. And you know, your buttonhole and your holder doesn't have to be on the side. It can be at the top. I guess you could have it at the bottom. You can have it anywhere you want. It was just where I decided to put mine. So that's if you used a button. I, on this one, thought, you know, the button for me is kind of fiddly. So I said, I'm going to try something with the Velcro. And the Velcro I like a lot. So this would be where, if you think you want to do a Velcro piece, at this point now, we have 3 layers, and they're all separate. We have our front cover, our outer cover here. We have our inner cover, and then we have our needle packet compartment. And this is how it's going to end up going in a little bit. We're going to end up putting the needle packet compartment on top of our lining, okay? And then in a little bit, this is going to go on top of the outer cover. See where we're going with this? Of course, this has not been trimmed, so but you get a sense of what we're doing. But in the meantime, if you decide that you want to do the Velcro, this is the time to do it, okay? Your outer cover is separate. All your other layers are separate. You can sew your Velcro without making any mistakes. So this is what I did here with this one. All right. I figured, I knew the length of my outer cover, and I said, well, it's going to fold. It's going to eventually fold 1, 2, and then over to 3. So I kind of guessed, and I said, all right, I did that on mine here. So I said 1, 2, 3. All right. And I said, well, about right here is where my Velcro is going to need to go. This piece of Velcro. All right, about right here. And most likely I would like my other piece of Velcro right here. So that'll work. So I just used some, whatever I had, it was white in this case, and I marked this, and then I just simply sewed my piece on, kind of in the middle, because I think that's the best spot for it. So I've done that. Then, where do we put it on the inside business? Well, at this point, we aren't going to have sewn our layers together yet, so we're not going to even worry about sewing it to B, which is your inner liner. You would be sewing it to your needle packet compartment. So what I did was, I laid my outer cover down the way it should go, and now I've already sewn my outside piece here. And what I did was, These are all the same size lengthwise. They're 20 inches. I did that same thing. I did 1, 2, 3, and my Velcro will already be here from what I just did. And I think, oh, well, I need to put this other piece of Velcro, the latching part, or whichever, the loop, right here. So you mark it, and then you sew your piece on here. All right. Remembering that you might want to go out over a little bit to the inside, because there's going to be a binding that's sewn down around here at 1/4 of an inch. All right. So as I said, that's an option. You do not need to do a Velcro. Several students did and really liked it. Another student had a great button she wanted to use, and she used a button and a loop. Like I said, the ponytail holders are great. They have a lot of stretchy. Or you can make yourself by taking maybe a 2-inch strip, folding it in on itself a few times, and then figuring out, when we get to this point, how big it needs to be to loop over to get to your button. But we're getting there, okay? So the next thing we are going to do is we're actually going to mark our needle packet compartments, in the sense that what we're going to do is, get this off of here, we are going to create these divisions that go down, that give us the break in the fabric that folds it over. All right, here, this one. All right, this is what we're going to do. However, we do it on the needle packet compartment. Oh, take that back one. I missed a step here. Let's back up 1 minute. We are going to do these markings, but I forgot that we need to combine these two. Combine your inner liner, which we fused down, and we are going to put the needle packet compartment, which is trimmed to match this one, 20 inches. We are going to left justify that corner and then the edge. All right, all the way down. We are then going to pin this needle packet compartment in strategic places all down here so it doesn't shift. At that point, that's when we're going to draw our lines. We are going to make our divisions here. And I wrote down here that I made my first mark at about 2.5. Then my next one at 2 1/4. And then there'll be a 1/2 inch. These 1/2 inchers are very important, because that's going to be the book break. All right. And then 2 more pockets, another 1/2 inch, 2 more pockets, another 1/2 inch, 2 more pockets. Here's also a place where you can be creative. As long as your 1/2 inch is where it needs to be based on the measurements here. If you want to make this one big pocket, which one person did, or you want to make one bigger, one smaller, so you have scissors you want to put in there, something that you have planned for, this is your time, you can do that. Okay? So once you've marked them, and I mentioned, if I didn't, you want to use something that's erasable. Either a friction pen, which erases with heat, which is my favorite, or if you have a chalk or something of that nature that could brush off or come off, or a water erasable marker, this would be the time to do it. So we are going to measure those. Once you've measured them on this one, you're going to take it to your sewing machine, back stitch down the row, back stitch, and continue on with all those divisions so you get to the end. And then once you have, erase your lines. So I love heating it, and the friction pen disappears. It's like magic. So erase that. So now and be sure, like I've said before, be sure that this is everything matches. 5.5 by 20. This should match. This is 5.5 by 20. I meant the big thing is the 20, the length. This is going to be less. That's going to be 5.5. The front will be 5.5, but they all have to be 20. Now's the time where we're going to actually put all 3 layers together. So we're going to get our outer cover. Okay, we're going to put right side down. And again, be wary, looking for if this is a directional fabric, be sure, you may have to turn it this way or that way to get it to be in the right spot when you open your book. Okay, and envision this being 5.5 by 20. I didn't trim it. The inner liner piece is 5.5 by 20, and this one is somewhere maybe around 5-ish, based on how big you made your bottom piece. You are going to line up. Now remember, this has been trimmed here. This is not here. This is gone. All right, this is all 5.5. So this inner liner and the outer cover are going to be the same size. All right. You're going to lay your inner liner that has its needle packet compartments divided up and sewn down. You are going to line this packet up with the front cover, left justifying, and of course lining up the bottom. All right. Now we are going to bind this. All right. And we are going to bind it, but we're also going to plan ahead. If you're going to do your button loop, this is where you're going to do it, because your button loop is going to be sewn under your binding. Your binding is going to be what holds that loop in place. So now you know where your divisions are of your book. Flip it over, figure out where your button goes, and remember, you're going to have some things in here that might make it a little bit bigger book. So give yourself enough room with this loop, or put your button in the correct place. And make your button loop, or use your elastic and pin it here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to prepare your binding if you haven't already. This book I used 2.5 inch binding, which is what I called for in the pattern. But on my second one, when I was playing this blue one, I thought, well, I kind of want a smaller binding. So this one I did a 2-inch binding, but I will say that it was a lot more to bind over. So I wouldn't do 2 again. If anything, I might do a 2 1/4 or a 2 1/2. The other thing that I did with this book is I sewed my binding on the wrong side. I should have sewn it on the right side and put this hand stitching on the other. Doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day, but it would look a little better, and that would be how I would do things next time. So you sew your binding on as you would a quilt, mitering your corners, and then flipping it over and hand stitching the other side down here. And then the last thing in this case would be to put your button, sew your button. You don't sew all the way through with your button. I just did scoop stitches and sewed my button to my outer cover. And really, that's it. That's your needle book. I will tell you a couple different things that I did just because. All right, we've finished this one. This was my demo. I'm going to teach a little more off of the completed one. Now, what I would probably do here, and I didn't do it, and you can do it, you probably should do it perhaps before you were to bind. You could do it after if you forgot about it. I actually, on this one, and I don't think you can see it, maybe you can see it this way. No, where my divisions were, where my 1/2 inches are, I actually ended up at the very end sewing through all the layers, even through the front cover, because it really made it more of a book. Now, the pattern that I used and extrapolated this pattern from didn't call for that. And you don't need to do it. This still works without having those kind of bookbinding on the outside, but you could. And you preferably would probably do it before you did your binding, but you certainly can also just be discreet here, backstitch, and sew down and backstitch. But anyway, that's the needle book. And now you can fill it up with things. A little tidbit here. These are my favorite binding needles. I tell everybody this. They're by Primitive Gatherings. We sell them here, available a lot of places, but they are long. This is one here. They are long and slender and have a bit of give to them. And the eye isn't huge, but it holds your thread when you're doing your binding, and the needle glides through the fabric. And I don't care to do binding much, but it makes it more tolerable with these needles. So that's the needle book. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch my video. Bye-bye.